He was the voice of resilience, a fighter who transformed pain into platinum hits. To the world, Jelly Roll was the embodiment of grit and redemption, his tattoos telling stories of struggle, his music echoing the battles he'd survived. But beneath the surface of triumph and tattoos, a silent war was raging, one he managed to keep hidden, even from his most devoted fans. It all began to unravel in a single moment backstage. Something cracked, and with it, the carefully guarded facade he had maintained for years. The aftermath left his inner circle stunned. In hindsight, the signs had been there all along, but did anyone truly see them before it was too late? For years, Jelly Roll was more than a chart-topping artist, he was a symbol of survival. From prison cells to standing ovations at the Grammys, his life seemed ripped from a movie script, gritty, raw, and overflowing with heart. But even the strongest voices can falter when the weight becomes unbearable. And behind closed doors, he was carrying a darkness deeper than anyone could have imagined. Now, sources close to the country rap star have begun to speak out, hinting that recent events may have finally exposed the toll of the battle he's been fighting in silence. Certainly. Here's a restructured and rephrased version of your text, turned into coherent, emotionally compelling paragraphs. It shook him to his core. While fans packed sold-out venues and celebrated his meteoric rise into the mainstream, Jelly Roll was quietly spiraling. Behind the cheers and the bright lights, he was battling a deeply personal crisis, one that threatened not only his career, but his health, his relationships, and even his will to keep going. This wasn't the stuff of tabloid headlines or dramatic public breakdowns. It was something more intimate, more human, something that cut straight to the core of the struggles he's always laid bare in his music, the addiction, anxiety, and the lingering ghosts of trauma that never truly go away. In past interviews, Jelly Roll had hinted at the darkness creeping back in, but few realized just how close to the edge he truly was. Insiders began to notice subtle changes, missed calls, cancelled appearances, and a vacant look in his eyes. Then came the breaking point, a private emergency that forced him to confront everything he thought he had already conquered. The moment was so intense, so raw, it left those closest to him fearing the worst. Yet, through it all, he did what he had always done, put on a brave face for his fans. But now, even that mask is starting to slip. In the coming moments, the truth he never intended to share is beginning to surface. What's been happening behind the scenes, the music, the tours, the spotlight, is more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. And as the full picture comes into focus, one haunting question remains: can the man who clawed his way up from rock bottom survive yet another fall? Long before the fame, the awards, and the headlines, he was just Jason DeFord, a kid from Ansch, a rough corner of Nashville where dreams were scarce and second chances even rarer. Born on December 4, 1984, Jason's early years were defined by instability. His mother struggled with mental illness and addiction. His father scraped by, selling meat out of a truck to keep food on the table. Life was chaotic and often cruel. But in the middle of all that turmoil, young Jason found an unlikely refuge in music. He was drawn to raw, unfiltered rap, the kind that didn't flinch from the truth. Artists like Tupac and 3-6 Mafia, who wore their pain like armor, became his heroes. Inspired, Jason started writing his own rhymes, dreaming of something bigger. But while he fantasized about a life beyond the streets were already pulling him in. By 14, he was arrested for the first time. By 16, he was in and out of juvenile detention. Before long, a felony conviction would follow, branding him with a past that would shadow him for years. For most, that would have been the end. But not for Jason. Locked away, he found clarity in confinement. He began channeling his pain into lyrics, scribbling verses in jail cells and dreaming of a future that didn't yet exist. Music became more than an escape, it became his salvation. When he got out, he embraced a nickname his mother had given him as a chubby kid, Jelly Roll, and turned it into a persona of unapologetic honesty. He sold mixtapes from the trunk of his car, performed at underground shows, and teamed up with other southern rappers. There were no managers, no budgets, just raw talent and relentless hustle. His music wasn't polished or packaged for pop radio. It told stories of addiction, poverty, broken homes, and the aching need for redemption, not as themes, but as lived truths. Slowly, the world started to listen. But the mainstream didn't accept him overnight. Covered in tattoos, heavy-set, and brutally vulnerable, Jelly Roll didn't fit the clean-cut image the industry often demands. And that's exactly why fans loved him. They didn't just listen to his music, they saw themselves in it. Behind the scenes, his life continued to evolve. He became a father young, and the birth of his daughter, Bailey Ann, changed everything. She wasn't just a new chapter, she was his anchor. In the chaos of touring, recording, and personal battles, she became his reason to keep going. More than any gold record or standing ovation, she gave him purpose. And yet, even the strongest anchors can strain under the weight of the storm. Absolutely. Here's your revised text, transformed into compelling and emotionally resonant paragraphs. When everything else felt like it was crumbling, one person helped hold Jelly Roll together. He later met Bunny XO, a podcaster and model who would become not only his wife but his foundation. Through his darkest moments, she stood by him, offering strength, stability, and a kind of love he had once thought was beyond reach. With her by his side, he began to believe again, not just in love, but in the possibility of healing. Together, they built a family that became the true center of his world. Even as he toured the country and built a powerful name in music, Jelly Roll never let his fans forget what truly mattered to him. His wife, his children, and the dream of building a better legacy than the one he inherited remained at the heart of everything he did. Still, the demons didn't vanish. He has always been candid about his ongoing struggles with addiction and mental health, openly admitting that while the fame grew, the pain didn't disappear, it simply grew quieter, harder to spot. His rise in country music surprised many, including himself. When he crossed over into the genre, fusing his raw, vulnerable lyrics with country melodies and soul-stirring storytelling, something clicked. A new audience found him, and what they discovered wasn't just a performer, but a man who had survived the kind of pain most people bury. His breakout single Son of a Sinner captured the raw contradiction that lives inside him, the tug-of-war between faith and failure, redemption and relapse. The song didn't just put him on the map, it launched him into the stratosphere. With the success came awards, TV appearances, and an unforgettable Grand Ole Opry debut. For the kid from Unch, standing in that hallowed circle brought tears to his eyes and silence to a room full of country legends. It was a full-circle moment, but the weight of his past never left his shoulders. Jelly Roll has said time and again that he never set out to be famous, he wanted to be impactful. He wanted to be a voice for the broken, a reminder to the forgotten that they're not alone. It's a noble mission, but one that comes at a cost. Behind the scenes, the pressure mounted. Each success brought more responsibility, more scrutiny, more sleepless nights wondering if he was enough, for his fans, for his family, for himself. And recently, those cracks have begun to show. According to those closest to him, family members, longtime collaborators, the burden has begun to take its toll. Whispers of burnout, a quiet health scare, an emotional strain behind closed doors began to surface. He still smiles for the cameras. He still pours himself into every performance. But those who truly know him say something has shifted. He's withdrawing more, reflecting deeply, wrestling with a question that haunts many who claw their way out of the darkness: can you ever truly outrun the pain you've spent your whole life trying to survive? That's where we find Jelly Roll today, and not just as an artist, but as a man suspended between the life he escaped and the life he's built. A husband. A father. A fighter. And now, perhaps more than ever, a soul searching for peace in a world that keeps pulling him back into the fire. What happens next remains unwritten. But one thing is certain, the battle isn't over. And the next chapter could be the most defining one yet. For months, quiet concern had rippled through Jelly Roll's inner circle. Not from gossip columns or media leaks, but from those who see him every day. His tour crew. His family. His wife, Bunny. They'd noticed the signs, the fatigue, the sleepless nights, the distant look during performances. He wasn't disconnected from the music, but from himself. Something wasn't right. Then, everything changed. Just hours before a major appearance, a private medical emergency sent shock waves through his team. Jelly Roll collapsed in his dressing room. One moment, there was calm, the next, chaos. EMTs were called. His blood pressure had spiked. He was pale, shaking, struggling to catch his breath. The official word was exhaustion, the natural result of a grueling tour schedule. But those on the inside knew better. This wasn't simple fatigue. This was a warning, his body screaming the truth his heart had been too proud to say. He was burning out. Doctors urged immediate rest. Not a short break, but a full stop. No more shows. No more press. It was time for a reckoning, not just with the schedule, but with the years of emotional weight that had gone unaddressed. And so now, in this fragile space between collapse and comeback, Jelly Roll stands once more at a crossroads. Here is your revised and rephrased version, broken into natural and emotionally resonant paragraphs. Despite urgent warnings from doctors about his overall health, Jelly Roll, ever the fighter, resisted slowing down. There were tour dates on the calendar, fans waiting in cities across the country, and obligations he felt too loyal to abandon. Cancelling shows felt, to him, like breaking a promise. And if there's one thing Jelly Roll has always strived for, it's to never let people down, because he knows all too well what it feels like to be left behind. But behind closed doors, the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Years of physical strain, emotional exhaustion, and untreated mental health struggles were catching up with him. The man who once clawed his way out of addiction was now battling a different kind of monster, the pressure to be strong for everyone else while quietly falling apart himself. It wasn't just the unstage collapse that raised alarms. Other red flags began to emerge. A missed podcast appearance with Bunny, rare for a couple so connected and transparent. A sudden disappearance from social media. Interviews postponed without explanation. For someone who once shared his deepest pain with the world, the silence was deafening. Fans began to worry. Something had changed. Then came the moment that confirmed what many had feared, not through a press release or dramatic headline, but in a quiet late-night live stream. With only a dim lamp lighting his face, Jelly Roll spoke directly to his fans. Not as a chart-topping artist, but as a man unraveling. "I ain't been okay," he confessed, his voice trembling. "I thought I could carry it all, but I can't. I've been scared. I've been tired. And I've been ignoring my own warning signs for too long." In that raw moment, he opened up about the crushing weight of performing while battling anxiety and panic attacks. He admitted that while he hadn't relapsed into drugs, he had fallen into other unhealthy patterns, emotional eating, isolating himself, and pushing beyond his limits until his body could no longer keep up. What made the confession so powerful wasn't just the vulnerability, it was the humility. This was the same man who had once stared down prison bars and addiction, now admitting something even more difficult, that he was human and he needed help. In the days that followed, fans rallied behind him. Social media flooded with messages of love and encouragement. Bunny, his wife and partner through it all, posted her own heartfelt message, a reminder that real strength isn't about always being okay, but about knowing when to pause, heal, and ask for grace. But as the dust began to settle, a more sobering reality emerged. Doctors had delivered a stark warning: if Jelly Roll didn't make immediate changes, he was at risk of developing long-term, life-threatening health issues. Tests revealed high blood pressure, elevated stress levels, and signs of cardiac strain, the kind of symptoms that, left unchecked, could be fatal. He was faced with a choice: stop now and begin the process of healing, or risk not being around to see the legacy he had worked so hard to build. It was a wake-up call he couldn't ignore. Quietly, Jelly Roll began to restructure his life. He pulled out of several upcoming shows, choosing to prioritize his health for the first time in a long time. He returned to therapy, began working with a trainer, and reconnected with spiritual practices he had set aside during his rise to stardom. More importantly, he started having honest conversations with his family, with Bunny, with his daughter, opening up about the fears and pain he had buried for years. Because the truth is, the pain never fully goes away. It just finds quieter places to hide. For longtime fans, this isn't the first storm they've watched him weather. But something about this one feels different. This isn't just about bouncing back from failure, it's about choosing to live fully and intentionally, even when everything inside feels broken. And that choice is what makes this chapter so powerful. Jelly Roll is no longer just the underdog who beat the odds. He's the man standing at the peak, staring back at the darkness, and deciding, perhaps for the first time, that he deserves peace too. This moment, painful as it is, could become the most pivotal of his life. Not because of the crisis itself, but because of what he does next. Will he return stronger, more focused, more intentional? Will he take the reins of his health and finally place himself at the center of the story? Or will the weight of expectation pull him back into the very struggle he's been trying so hard to escape? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the world is watching, and this time, they're cheering not just for the performer, but for the man. Here is a rephrased and polished version of your lines, arranged into clear, emotionally resonant paragraphs. No one knows exactly what the future holds. Whether Jelly Roll will step back into the relentless grind that nearly broke him, or whether he'll choose a different path, remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, his story isn't over. It's still unfolding, line by line, heartbreak by heartbreak, triumph by quiet triumph. And if this latest chapter has taught us anything, it's that even our strongest heroes sometimes need time to heal. As fans, all we can do now is hope that the next time he walks out on stage, it's not just for us, but because he truly wants to be there. Because he's healthy, whole, and ready to begin again. For all the hit songs, sold-out arenas, and emotional ballads, Jelly Roll's greatest legacy may not be measured by charts or trophies, but by the lives he's touched along the way. Beneath the tattoos, the gritty voice, and the troubled past is a man who has chosen to build a legacy not on fame, but on service. From the beginning, Jelly Roll has used his platform not to elevate himself, but to shine a light on the forgotten, the incarcerated, the addicted, the broken-hearted. He hasn't just sung about redemption, he's lived it. And more than that, he's reached back to pull others through the fire, too. One of the most powerful moments of his journey came when he returned to the same juvenile detention center in Nashville where he was once held. But this time, he didn't arrive in handcuffs, he came back as a mentor, as hope personified. He donated $250,000 to build a fully equipped music studio inside the facility, giving incarcerated youth a voice, a tool for healing, and a reason to believe in second chances. I wanted to give these kids hope, he told CBS Mornings in 2023. Music saved my life, maybe it can save theirs too. But his impact didn't stop there. Jelly Roll has become a fierce and unrelenting advocate for mental health, addiction recovery, and criminal justice reform. He's spoken at recovery centers, raised funds for families devastated by addiction, and thrown his full weight behind reentry programs that help former inmates find new beginnings. While other celebrities may shy away from hard conversations, Jelly Roll runs toward them. His partnership with his wife, Bunny XO, has only deepened that mission. Together, they've transformed their podcast, Dumb Blonde, into a safe space for honest dialogue about trauma, healing, and personal growth. It's not just entertainment, it's a lifeline for listeners who need to hear they're not alone. That's what sets Jelly Roll apart. His fans aren't just supporters, they're survivors. His concerts feel more like group therapy sessions, where strangers sing along not just to the music, but to their own pain, their own healing. And maybe that's his true gift. He's built a community. He's given a voice to the invisible. He's reminded us that our past doesn't have to define our future, and that redemption, while messy, is still within reach. Now, as he faces one of the most difficult seasons of his life, Jelly Roll's legacy feels more urgent than ever. Not because of fear, but because of faith, faith that the man who climbed out of rock bottom once before can rise again. This time, not for the spotlight, but for himself. Jelly Roll's story isn't a fairy tale. It's raw, unpolished, unpredictable. It's a battle-scarred ballad composed of missteps, hard lessons, and brave comebacks. But that's what makes it beautiful. Because when Jelly Roll steps on stage, he brings every part of that story with him. And when he disappears from the spotlight, it reminds us that even the strongest voices sometimes need silence. Even the heroes we lean on need to lean on others too. So if his music has ever comforted you, if his lyrics helped you through a sleepless night, if his journey reminded you that healing is possible, this is your moment to show up for him. Send him love. Support his recovery. And if you're facing your own battles, let his story be a reminder you're not alone. You matter. And it's never too late to start again. While we wait for the next chapter, one that only he can write, let's keep rooting for the man who gave us hope. Because now, maybe, he needs ours.